Great, thanks. So today I'll be reviewing the methodology behind the ESG fund ratings data points available on RPAG. For some brief background, MSCI is a leading provider of decision support tools and services for the global investment community. We have over 50 years of experience in research, data, and technology, enabling our clients to understand and analyze key drivers of risk and return. MSCI provides solutions that clients use to gain insight and improve transparency across their investment process. On the ESG side of the business, we have one of the largest research teams in the industry, with more than 270 analysts located around the globe. We work with more than 1,700 clients, and there are over 1,500 equity and fixed income indexes using MSCI ESG research. Most importantly for today's presentation, MSCI leverages comprehensive ESG analysis of over 10,000 companies to score and rate almost 65,000 multi-asset class, global, mutual funds, and ETFs. Since the ESG fund ratings are really only as good as the underlying data, I'm going to start by explaining MSCI's company level analysis. We'll cover what the company ratings are and how they are calculated. I'll then explain how that company data rolls up to the fund level assessments. So what are ESG ratings? MSCI ESG ratings provide investors with a measure of companies' resilience to financially relevant ESG risks and opportunities. We evaluate ESG risks through key ESG issues that fall into three categories, as shown on this slide. Starting on the left in the blue frame, the first is governance, which we view as the foundation of risk management and the starting point of our analysis. Some examples of topics covered on the governance side are board structure, executive pay, business ethics, and tax transparency. The second category consists of risks that may materialize over a longer time horizon, such as climate change and water scarcity. And the third category, shown there on the right, is the idiosyncratic event risks, such as one-off accidents and labor disputes. This slide summarizes the specific steps that go into rating a company. The process is broadly broken into industry-level analysis and company-specific analysis. So starting at the top left of this slide and moving across to the right, the first step is to group companies based on their industry. We then select the key ESG issues that are most financially relevant to each industry. There are 35 key issues overall in the ESG ratings methodology, but companies are only assessed on a selection of issues that have the potential to result in a financial impact. For instance, a software company may have high exposure to privacy and data security and human capital development, while a gas utility company may have high exposure to carbon emissions and health and safety. The selections always include at least one issue from each of the environment, social, and governance pillars. The third step is to evaluate the relative importance of each key issue. We do this by evaluating the time horizon for ESG risks to materialize into financial impacts for each company. After that, we move on to the company-specific analysis, which starts at the bottom right of this slide. The first step is to measure a company's ESG risk exposures to its relevant key issues. To evaluate a company's risk exposure, we consider both business activities and geography of operations. Those can vary greatly for companies within the same industry. The next step is to evaluate a company's management of its ESG risks. So the first component of ESG risk management is informed by practices. This includes oversight mechanisms that a company has in place, public commitments, and efficiency measures. An evaluation of practices helps answer the question of how strong a company's programs and policies are to mitigate their risk. The second component is performance. This typically includes quantifiable metrics, such as carbon emissions or the multi-year trend in a company's water intensity. The performance component helps us evaluate the effectiveness of the company's programs and policies. And at the completion of step 5 here, we'll have individual environmental, social, and governance scores for each company, as well as an overall absolute weighted average ESG score using those three environment, social, and governance scores and weights. The scores fall within a 0 to 10 range, with 0 being the worst and 10 being the best. Then the final step in the process is to transform that weighted average ESG score into an industry relative ESG score and letter rating. We do this through a normalization exercise that transforms an industry's distribution of weighted average key issue scores into 7 equal-sized bands of ESG ratings from CCC to AAA. Essentially, the companies with scores at the lowest end of an industry group will be rated CCC, while those with scores at the highest end of the industry group will be AAA. The remainder of the companies will be distributed based on their scoring relative to those top and bottom performers. We've now covered the company ESG ratings and are moving on to the fund ESG ratings. So in parallel with the company rating, the fund rating aims to measure the resilience of a fund's holdings to long-term financially relevant ESG risks and opportunities. As shown on this slide, we use the same overall rating scale for funds and for companies, while also bucketing the letter ratings into leader, average, and laggard categories. Leader funds hold companies with strong management of their ESG exposures and tend to be more financially resilient to ESG risks. At the other end of the scale on the bottom, the laggard funds hold companies with poor management of ESG exposures and tend to be more vulnerable to ESG risks. Onto the final slide, we're going to cover specifically how the company-level ESG scores roll up to the fund-level ESG scores and how to interpret those fund scores. So starting on the left, you'll see that the sample fund holds companies A, B, C, and D. Moving across, you can see the weight and score for each of the environment, social, and governance pillars. And underneath are the corresponding fund scores that are available on the RPAG platform. So let's focus on the environmental pillar as an example to understand how it's calculated. For each company, the fund position weight is multiplied by the pillar weight. Those are then rebalanced to 100% to get an effective weight that considers the fact that the environment pillar matters more in some industries than in others. For instance, company A with a high environment weight of 42% might be a mining company, while company C with a low environment weight of 6% might be a bank. Those newly calculated effective weights are then multiplied by the environment scores to calculate a weighted average score. That's the fund environment score of 3.6 shown at the bottom. That same overall logic is used for the fund social and the fund governance score, where each of the fund level scores is essentially just a weighted average that considers the pillar weights as well as the position weights within the fund. Moving further along to the right, for each company, you'll see the weighted average ESG score and the final industry adjusted company scores. Those industry adjusted scores are used to calculate the fund ESG quality score shown at the bottom. That's the top level score for a fund and is mapped directly to the letter rating shown on the far right. It's worth noting that since the fund environment, social, and governance scores are based on absolute company scores, while the fund ESG quality score is based on those relative industry adjusted scores, they're not expected to tie out with each other. For instance, in this case, the pillar scores that you see on the bottom left there, those are all less than 5, while the quality score is greater than 5. The implication for this portfolio is that the group of companies held tend to be somewhat below average when considered across the full universe of companies. If you consider a score of 5 as about average, these are all lower than that when looking at that global universe. But they're stronger ESG performers within their individual industries, which is why they have those industry adjusted scores that tend to be higher than their weighted average scores. All fund scores for pillars and the ESG quality score fall within the 0 to 10 range, with 10 being the best. And all of the fund scores can be compared across funds, regardless of the type of fund or sector allocation within a fund. This facilitates using the scores and ratings for fund selection. For instance, if you have a client particularly interested in the environment theme, you could apply rankings or filters to help select candidate funds that are strong on environment. Ultimately, if comparing the environment scores of 2 funds, the fund with the higher environment score will tend to hold companies that are doing a better job of managing environment risks. Likewise, a fund with a higher quality score or rating will tend to hold companies that are better positioned within their respective industries. Ultimately, the letter rating is the highest assessment and often a good place to start. The quality score provides more granularity within each rating band, and the pillar scores offer more focused thematic assessments. I'll turn things over now to Karina Gascon for a demonstration on the platform.
All right. Thank you, Ken, for that great overview on MSCI's methodology. And as Ken mentioned, my name is Karina Gascone. I'm a member of the RPAG investment team here, and I will be walking you all through how to actually access this methodology that Ken went over and the report itself within the RPAG system. So with that said, let me just share my screen here. All right, so this screen might look familiar to you all. This is the RPAG system. The first place that I'm going to demo how to access the ESG ratings report is actually within a fund lookup itself here. So many of you are all probably familiar with fund lookup. I know I use this tool on a daily basis here doing investment research, what have you. And so here you can either type in a ticker or fund name, or how I'm going to demo it today is by filtering based off of these criteria here. And as some of you may notice, we've recently launched a new filter, the minimum ESG rating. So under this one, I'm just going to demo how you can do that by filtering with a leader score of at least a minimum of AA. I can then search within here, and within fund lookup, only all of the funds in the system that have an ESG rating of AA or higher will populate. So once this pulls up, I can actually show you how to click one of these funds and pull the report itself. So as you can see here, JP Morgan US Value, Putnam Large Cap Value, these both score or have at least a AA rating or higher within the system here. So I can click whichever fund I want. I'll choose Putnam. In this case, you can add as many funds as you want. And then you can actually go down here to download selected funds and then pull a report itself here. The title of the report is ESG Ratings Report. It's been added to all of the other great resources and reports that are within the RPAG system. So you'll see that within the report section here. After clicking off whichever report I want, in this case, I'm just going to select ESG Ratings Report, but as you may or may not know, you can click as many reports as you want. I can then click the download button and the report itself will download in a new tab. So here is the report itself. I'll run through what it just quickly looks like and dive deeper into it at the end of this session. But here we have the first 2 pages of the ESG rating methodology, which Ken laid out and went through in the first part of this webinar. And then after those 2 ESG rating methodology pages explaining that methodology more in depth, you can actually see what the fund has rated. So here you can see Putnam Large Cap Value is a leader in its asset class and has a rating of AA. Now, another useful tool within the system where you can pull an ESG ratings report is under fund research. So this is under scorecard system fund research, very similar to fund lookup. However, it's just on a separate tab. I can filter by entering a ticker or fund name if you have a specific fund that you might want to dive deeper into from an ESG standpoint, or you can simply filter, as I did with fund lookup, based off of the minimum ESG rating. Now, in order to minimize all of my funds that will populate, I'm going to add some additional filters here. So I've filtered by product mutual funds, and that's a really important factor in this case because at the moment, MSCI's methodology only applies to mutual funds. So if you're looking for a separate account or CIT, those will not populate an ESG ratings report at the moment. So mutual funds for right now, I've filtered by asset class. And then again, just to filter my universe a little bit more so I don't get a lot of results, I'm going to add an information ratio above 0, score of 10, and then add in that leader rating here of AA or higher. And then I can click search. And at the bottom, all of my results based off of the criteria, including that minimum ESG rating, will show down below. So as you can see, I've put some pretty high standards here for this search, but so only a few populate. I'll use MFS International Growth as an example here. You can click as many funds as you want, whether that's the MFS Fund, Fidelity International Growth, or MFS International Intrinsic Value Fund. And you can scroll down to the bottom here. Again, populate whichever report you want, but we're really focusing on ESG today. So we can populate that ESG ratings report here, which is a new feature to these report sections down below. Then you would simply click Generate Report, and you'll go up to the top here after the report has finished generating, and it will show up here. Same thing that I showed you with that first report, 2 pages of methodology, and then the actual ESG rating report itself. And so now this was on an individual fund basis, or just me simply looking up whichever funds I wanted to conduct some extra due diligence on from an ESG perspective. But how can I actually pull this for client lineups, for plan sponsors that might be asking about ESG, want that included in their FIRs or their meetings? And you can access that within the client prospect section. So within your actual fund lineups or your client lineups, you can pull a report separately, just having that ESG report of that entire plan lineup, or you can actually include it into the fiduciary investment review. So I will show you all how to do both of those here. Again, this is purely if clients are asking for this. This is just another additional tool that can be used in qualitative perspective, additional resources in reviewing investments, but really if clients are asking for it. So once the plan lineup populates, you can scroll down to this investment section here in that blue, green section color, whichever you may define it as, and click anywhere in that colored section. And you'll see some reports options generate down here. So I'm going to click the scorecard one, and under here, you can actually change it from a scorecard report to any of these reports here, whether that's a returns analysis, score history, or now an ESG ratings report. So if I click ESG ratings report, I can either include assets, not include assets if I want, and then I can pull this either as a PDF or publish it to my fiduciary briefcase. And so after I publish that PDF, it will download and it will populate a report for my entire plan lineup. So again, first 2 pages of methodology, and then the actual plan lineup for the plan will show all of those funds within the lineup itself. Now, the final section that you can pull this, and especially from a plan lineup perspective, is in the fiduciary investment review itself, or as we have coined the term more, FIR. So in the FIR, you can see I've already created one under here under my saved investment reviews for this, the purpose of this demo, ESG rating demo. So I can continue that. I've already gone through step 1 of reviewing the plan, step 2 of making any considerations I might want to, whether that's watch list or fund replacement with fund changes, recommended fund changes. And then in step 3 is actually where you can add the ESG ratings report itself. So if I go to build report, I can scroll down after I've chosen my template and drag in the ESG ratings report to wherever I find it best in talking to the client about ESG ratings. So here under investments, again, you just drag it anywhere you want. I've seen advisors put it after the scorecard if after they've conducted their investment review and clients have been asking about ESG. It's a great talking point after, reviewing the scorecard, all of that methodology to really go into ESGs if clients are asking for it. Or in the appendix, if after going through the whole investment review, it comes up, you can pull up this ratings and discuss how each of those funds looks from an ESG standpoint as well. So once you drag it in there, you can move it wherever you want, and then you can pull the actual FIR. Now, within the FIR or fiduciary investment review, again, same report will pull in. It'll just pull into wherever you added it into your fiduciary investment review. So after reviewing where you can access all of the places to find that ESG ratings report, whether that's under fund lookup, fund research, within the client's lineup under that scorecard investment section and pulling a report, or actually adding it into your fiduciary investment review. Let's go over what that actually looks like within each of those sections. As I mentioned, the first 2 pages are ESG rating methodology. So as Ken highlighted and really went into in depth on how MSCI's methodology actually came about, this is a great touching point on how we get to that final ESG letter rating. So it starts with that ESG quality ratings, then moves into final ESG rating. And then what we're really looking at there is that ESG letter rating, which I'll highlight down below in the bottom. Now, funds are ranked from AAA to CCC, and that's what that letter rating will actually have listed. And then to dive deeper into that letter rating itself, you can see here what makes a leader. That's that AAA, AA. And then as Ken mentioned, that rating is ranked from a 0 to 10 rating section here. So from 7.1 to 10, those are leaders in the industry, and you can see what that means here. So if clients are asking more about the methodology itself, want to dive a little bit deeper into how they've actually gotten to that rating, these first 2 pages are great resources on actually reviewing that methodology itself. And then finally, the ESG ratings itself for each of the funds. So as you can see here, I've pulled a sample client lineup, and each of these has a ESG quality ratings based off of those pillars that Ken mentioned, and then that final ESG rating. As Ken highlighted, these ESG quality ratings these ESG quality ratings pillars are more from an absolute perspective and actually don't make up that 9.6. So you can see these don't add up to 9.6 here. So this is more on a relative term, and what we really want to highlight in these reviews right now, and is a better, broader sense of how the fund is actually doing. If clients want to dive more deeper into the environmental, social, governance aspects, these pillar ratings can be useful, but what we're really focusing on is that ESG rating here. So in this case, Fidelity International Capital Appreciation has received a 9.6 and therefore a AAA rating. And then you can see all the way on that right-hand column, this score is actually the RPAG scorecard methodology. So in addition to reviewing ESG ratings, you can also see how that fund has scored from a quantitative and qualitative perspective, looking more at those investment analytics. So a great resource here within RPAG that has just launched in this last week.
So thank you guys both for presenting today. You guys were amazing, and I hope the rest of you have a fantastic week.